Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
What's up, everybody? My name is Patrick Kenny. Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host for today's episode, and I think we got a good one for y'all today. So today's episode is going to be a preview of the NL West, and I have a few questions for every team out there. We're going to analyze everybody's roster, and then obviously see who is the best team. It's probably going to be the Dodgers, but the Padres do have a good chance, and then the other teams in the NL West are also very good and very, very capable teams. So we're just going to get into it right now, and we're going to start out with the Dodgers. So the first question I have for them is, how are they going to fit all of their pitchers into a starting rotation? Because they have really, really good pitching, and they have 3 Cy Young Award winners. Arguably, David Price is probably their, I would say, is definitely on the inside looking out type of thing, because it is March Madness. So that they're probably on the bubble, or he's probably on the bubble, as is Tony Gonsolin, and then Dustin May as well. And I mean, they have Walker Buehler and Julio Urias. Those two are definitely going to be in their starting rotation. And then Trevor Bauer and Clayton Kershaw are as well. Now, RotoChamp does have the projected rotation as Clayton Kershaw, Trevor Bauer, Walker Buehler, Julio Urias, and then David Price. So that leaves out Dustin May as well as Tony Gonsolin. And so Dustin May is entering his 23-year-old season. He has had 2 years in the big so far, but he's mostly been used as a reliever in his short career so far. He is going to be a starter very soon, I would project, but for this year, I could see him being that potentially that number 6 guy if they go for a more a less straining rotation on their top guys like Kershaw, Bauer, and I mean, who knows? Even Walker Buehler might win the Cy Young this year. This team's pitching staff is so deep, it's ridiculous. Like, this is actually a super team now that they re-signed Justin Turner and they have Trevor Bauer, they signed Mookie Betts, they have Cody Bellinger, and like the list goes on of names that are just absolute studs on this team. So in the past 2 seasons for Dustin May, he has had last year he pitched in 12 games, had 56 innings, and then had a 2-1 record with a 2.57 ERA. Absolutely shoving off the mound out of the bullpen. And then in 2019, that was his rookie season, and he only pitched in 14 games, had 34 innings, and a 3.63 ERA with a 2-3 record. I mean, he's a really good pitcher. He's definitely got the talent. It's just that the Dodgers this season happen to be so deep at that starting pitching spot that there's just not room for guys like Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May. And May this season is projected to have about 100 innings, 90 in between 90 and 100, and then have an ERA that's near the high threes. I don't know if his ERA is going to be that high at all, especially if he's able to pick up on and continue with what he has had in the past. And I mean, and then Tony Gonsolin as well. He in 2020 he pitched in 9 games for 46 innings, had a 2-2 record and a 2.31 ERA. And then in 2019 he pitched in 11 games, had 40 innings pitched, a 4-2 record and a 2.93 ERA. I mean, I could definitely see a potential situation right here with the Dodgers and them having a sort of like a 6-man rotation, but having Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May rotate out that 6-man position. So, they go through their first 5, and then it's the 6 persons a day, and then you have Gonsolin pitching that day, and then you go through the next 6 days, and then on that following 6th day, you have Dustin May pitching. And I think that's a really good idea to keep their pitchers healthy for this playoff. And obviously the Dodgers are hoping to repeat as champions this season, as well as doing so much more, hopefully. And I mean, this team I could easily see winning over 100 games, or well over 100 games. I could probably see them winning if they are able to stay healthy and they are just amazing on the field as well, like not just on the mound. I could definitely see this team winning 120 games. And speaking of just stacked, their bullpen is definitely just it's really good. Their bullpen is crazy good this year. They have Corey Knebel, they have Kinsley Jansen, and as well as Tommy Ketel. Cannell's probably only going to get not a lot of work out of the bullpen this year, but you still have guys like Scott Alexander and Dennis Santana who are going to probably be like sort of a bridge guy to get from that 7th inning to the 8th inning where they can go with their setup guy or a closer guy. But this lineup is crazy good too. Like they have Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, Will Smith, Max Muncy, A.J. Pollock, and Chris Taylor. I mean, obviously Chris Taylor's probably going to be their least known guy, I would say, just because of I would just say because of how he just is sort of a newer player. He's not necessarily a new player by any stretch of the imagination, but he's never been a consistent real like all-star level or attention grabber player. He has been a really good starter for since 2017. In 2017, he played in 140 games. 2018, 155. 2019, 124. And in 2020, he played in 56 games. 2017, he had a career high batting average at 288, and then it went down in 2018, 254, 262 in 2019, and then 270 last season. And he's projected this season to hit around 255, 265, that kind of area. But other than him, you have just absolute studs. You have Will Smith behind the plate, who was the MLB's number 2 overall prospect just a few years ago. And he's not a great hitter yet, but he still has a chance to hit over 20 home runs and still be that guy behind the plate. And then you get Mookie Betts, in MVP. He's projected to hit almost 300 this year, have over 30 home runs. Corey Seager, projected to hit almost 30 home runs, have a 290 average. Justin Turner, not projected to hit that many home runs this year, but he's still projected to hit 280 and still be one of those just solid guys over in the hot corner. And then you have guys like Cody Bellinger, who is projected to hit about 280 as well. He's projected to hit almost 40 home runs this year, have over 100 RBIs, and have over 10 stolen bases, probably 20 stolen bases, maybe even. like this team is super super. It's just so deep. Like, I mean, I haven't gone into depth yet since I've started doing this podcast with the Dodgers, but there's a reason that this team is just so deep. And you also have Austin Barnes, who is likely going to be the backup catcher behind Will Smith this season, but that doesn't mean that he's not good at all behind the plate. And you also have guys like Gavin Lux, who is probably going to alternate at second base a little bit with Chris Taylor. And I mean, Chris Taylor is one of those utility guys that you could just kind of find a spot on the field, whether it be shortstop, second base, or outfield, and he'll be able to find those spots. But the Dodgers bench isn't very deep, and it's not because they don't have good players on their bench. It's just they have more guys on in their pitching staff that they want to have on their 40-man roster, and then they have a few backup guys here and there. So if one person gets hurt, then they're going to just plug in somebody in a different spot, and they'll probably end up moving. Like, for example, if AJ Pollock were to sprain an ankle or something and be out for a little bit, and after he sprains that ankle, they'll move Chris Taylor into one of those spots, and move Chris Taylor into the outfield, I should say, and then have somebody like Gavin Lux come in at second base, that kind of thing. I mean, this team is so good. I mean, there's really not that many questions there for the Dodgers other than who's going to be in that rotation. I mean, Gavin Lux was projected at MLB's. Excuse me, I need to make a correction. Will Smith was not the projected number 2 a few years ago in MLB's pipeline. It was Gavin Lux. This guy is definitely going to be good, but it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to win that starting spot, or if it's going to be more of a sort of platoon situation for him. I mean, he's definitely going to be really, really good. But is he going to be really good this year, or is it going to be in a few years? And I mean, the only way that the Dodgers are going to be able to find out is if they, start playing him more often than not. But the Dodgers have, I think that the Dodgers have a good enough pitching staff and a good enough supporting cast that they'll be able to throw Gavin Lux out, throw him in the deep end basically, and see if he sinks or swims, and not necessarily have to risk a game because of it. And I mean, obviously, if they throw him at second base and he makes 4 errors in an inning, he's going to be gone for that game, and the Dodgers might end up losing that game. But for the most part, I think that the Dodgers have a lot of incentive to allow Gavin Lux a little bit of, or to give him sort of a longer leash than some of the other guys. And the most interesting, I think, question for the Dodgers this upcoming season is definitely how is this going to be Kershaw's last year? Now, they do have Walker Buehler and Dustin May and those guys lined up, and they have Trevor Bauer on a 3-year deal, but Trevor Bauer has been known to only sign short-term deals, and if he absolutely balls out this summer, he might turn down that second-year option for the $45 million. I think that one is a little bit unlikely, but they would have to re-sign a then 34-year-old Clayton Kershaw, who, while has been pretty magnificent in his career so far, I don't know if he is if the Dodgers would re-sign him, just because he's probably gonna cost a little bit too much money, I think. And I mean, it's hard to think that Kershaw is only 32, probably about to turn 33 this season. But he's definitely been one of the best pitchers in baseball for a very, very long time. I mean, his rookie campaign wasn't great. He only pitched in 107 innings in the 22 games that he pitched in with a 4.26 ERA. But after that, he absolutely has been one of the best pitchers in baseball for a very, very long time. He, in 2016, just 5 years ago, he had his career low in ERA with a 1.69, and then last season it looked like he was back to the form that he was in 2017 when he was at his age 29 season through in 27 games, 175 innings, went 18-4, and had a 2.31 ERA. And then last year he pitched in 10 regular season games, went 6-2 in the 58 innings that he pitched, and then had a 2.16 ERA with 62 strikeouts. And he's never had the fastest fastball in baseball by any stretch of the imagination, but I think what he's been doing the last few years is sort of reinventing himself, kind of the way like CC Sabathia did, where Sabathia used to be one of the hardest throwing guys in baseball, and then all of a sudden had to become a finesse pitcher, if you will. He had to kind of change the way that he attacked batters and who he was, because he didn't have that fastball anymore. And last year his fastball did jump back up a little bit from 2018 and 2019. His fastball was averaging like 90 to 91 miles an hour, and then last season he was averaging 92 to 93 with his fastball. And I mean, he's definitely not a bad pitcher by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not what he once was. But that doesn't mean that he's not valuable by any means. I mean, this season he's projected to pitch from anywhere from 160 to 175 innings pitched. He's projected to win about 13 games this season, lose about 6 or 7, and I mean, those are just projections. Anything can obviously happen. And his ERA is projected to be in the low threes. And I think it'll probably be a little bit lower. I think it'll probably be in the high 2s. But I think that he's still just such a good guy, and I don't think that he is going to need to try and strike everybody out with his defense behind him. And he has such a good defense. And if he trusts whoever his catcher happens to be, whether that's Will Smith or Austin Barnes, if he's able to if he's able to trust in their pitch calling, and obviously he has the experience to call his own game, but if he's able to be effective like he was in the postseason last year and in the regular season last year, I think that he's going to have a fantastic year. If this is his farewell to the Dodgers, I think that they have a really good shot at going back out on top again. And I think that's all you can really ask for if you are Clayton Kershaw. And so that's all the questions I really have for the Dodgers. In the next segment, we're going to be tackling the Giants as well as the Rockies. And then after that, we're going to talk about the Diamondbacks. And then in the last segment, we're going to talk about we're going to definitely try and talk about the Padres for sure. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a second.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, everybody. So, in this segment, we're going to be kind of talking about both the Giants and the Rockies a little bit. I'm throwing both of these two teams in together just because neither of these teams are going to be very good this year, but both teams have a lot of positives and maybe some negatives as well. So, the Giants, the first question I have for the Giants are... what is going to happen with Buster Posey isn't the right question I'm trying to ask. It's more, what are they going to be able to get from Buster Posey? I mean, he's okay. He's obviously one of the best catchers in baseball, but last season he didn't do great. In fact, last season he only hit .257, which was a career low, except for in 2009 in the 22 at-bats that he got. He only hit .118, but that was a career low for him. As well as he only had, it was also a career low in on-base percentage as well, and slugging. So it's definitely, and a career high in strikeouts, actually. And what's most crazy about that? Well, not most crazy. He didn't play last season, but these are all of his 2019 stats. He's 34, or going into his age 34 season, and he hasn't been what at least the last two seasons that he's played. He's dealt with the injury bug quite a bit, but. In 2018, he only played in 105 games. In 2019, he only played in 114. In both of those years, he has a combined 12 home runs. And for RBIs, he has a combined 79. And so he just hasn't been producing at the plate as much. And, I mean, they do have a really good catching prospect in Joey Bart, who is definitely going to get some playing time this upcoming season, but with Posey being there, they're going to have to pull, and I've talked about this the last few episodes, they're going to have to do a sort of Joe Mauer move where they move him over to first base, just because they have this really good catching prospect, and they can't spend any more time wasting their time with Buster Posey back there, and when they have somebody like a top prospect that they have to get in the league very soon. I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see, and it was definitely his worst season in 2019, but if the Giants don't pick up Buster Posey's option for next year, this could be his last year in San Francisco. And, you know, everybody wants to see their hometown hero and the prospect that came up with them and that kind of thing. I know that I've felt it quite often, I would tend to say, just with growing up and being a Cleveland baseball fan, just seeing the guys that you like started growing up watching, and you know your team just decided to go in a different direction. It happened recently with the Indians. with San Francisco Lindor. It happened before with CC Sabathia and Cliff Lee. And it's hard. You see all of those guys that are just, your favorite player of all time, or at least of that time, and you see that your team just doesn't want to give them what they're asking for, and because of that, it's just kind of it's disappointing to see. So for Giants fans, I am very hopeful that Buster Posey is going to hopefully re-sign with your San Francisco Giants, and hopefully that they're able to move Brandon Belt instead of Buster Posey, and that way they can get their the new prospect, y'all's Joey Bart, up to where where back up to the bigs and see if he's as good as people are thinking that he is. But this lineup is, I would say, underwhelming to say the least. Obviously, y'all don't have Madison Bumgarner anymore. He's now with the Diamondbacks. But y'all's starting pitching isn't the problem. Y'all have Kevin Guzman, Johnny Cueto, Anthony Descalafani. That is a hard last name to say. But then you also have guys like Alex Wood and Aaron Sanchez. And your lineup isn't great either. Your bottom five guys, or bottom four guys are pretty good. I mean, Buster Posey is projected to hit 5th, Brandon Belt 6th, Brandon Crawford 7th. So those guys have been or at one point were the young core of the San Francisco Giants. And y'all still have Tommy La Stella, who is projected to be the leadoff hitter, hit about 11 home runs, get 50 RBIs, hit about 275, have an on-base percentage of 348, and go 1 for 1 in walks to strikeouts. He's projected to walk 42 times this season, as well as strike out 42 times this season. And Mike Yastrzemski is a really good outfielder. He's projected to hit 255 and have an on-base percentage of 335 this season. He hasn't been in the bigs that long, but he's still, but his big league career is still relatively young. Last season he played in 54 of the games. Hit 297 with a 400 on base percentage. One of the bright spots last year for the Giants for sure. And then the last full season that Major League Baseball has had was in 2019, where he played in 107 games, had 371 at bats, hit 21 home runs, had 55 RBIs, hit 272, and had a 334 on base percentage. And most places are projecting his average to go down a little bit, somewhere in the 240s or 250s, but he is projected to hit about as many home runs as he did in 2019, with most of the projections having him at about 20 to 26 home runs or so. And I think that's definitely doable for him. And then Donovan Solano is going to be the second baseman for the Giants this year. He's projected to hit about 278 in the 3 spot for them, hit about 7 home runs, not a lot of RBIs, only about 57 to 60. And then his on-base percentage is projected at 317. He is projected to strike out quite a bit, actually. Not as much as Yastrzemski is. Yastrzemski is projected to lead the team in strikeouts with 159. And that's probably what is leading to his decline in average so far. And then Alex Dickerson is still a very, very good player, and he wasn't in the league in 2017 or 2018. He wasn't in the bigs, I should say, but 2016 was his rookie campaign, and in the 84 games that he played, he hit 10 home runs in 2016, stole 5 bases, hit 257. 2019, he played in 68 games, hit 276, and then last season he played 52 games, had 151 at-bats, hit 10 home runs, 27 RBIs, and hit 298 with a 371 on-base percentage. And so this season he's projected to hit about anywhere from 270 up to 290, have an on-base percentage around 340 or 350, and then he's also projected to hit about 20 home runs or so with a full season. And he is technically in his prime for just in general his prime. And I think that he is a decent bargaining chip, I would say. I definitely think that the Giants should get younger. I don't think that they necessarily need to rebuild as old as it looks like they're trying to rebuild. The Giants president, Faraz Zadie, has impressively resistant to the tear it down. He's been really resistant to like the tearing it all down, like a lot of other GMs do, and it has kind of resulted in the Giants being in a little bit better shape than those teams, and it's like it's not like they're like the Rockies or anything like this. This is still going to be a fun team to watch, and they're still going to give teams like the Padres and the he's definitely going to give teams like the Padres and the Dodgers and the Braves and all of the really good teams in Major League Baseball and in the NL specifically a decent run for their money in a lot of games. And I mean, mostly because like this team is still very capable. They're not going to win anything necessarily, but they are still very capable. They did add Anthony Descalafani and Alex Wood this offseason, and they do have Kevin Guzman. He might not be an ace, but he might be the ace for them this year. The Giants are just a really, really sturdy, middle of the ground, like middle of the road team. They're not going to do anything special. I mean, but baseball is baseball, and it can, crazier things have happened. I mean, the Marlins made the playoffs last year. We can't count out baseball happening. Or and hopefully by this summer, the COVID-19 protocols are relaxed and everybody is staying healthy, and hopefully things like that are going to be sort of relaxed, and games aren't going to be canceled because of COVID and things like that, and so hopefully that the Giants are going to. I mean, if you're a Giants fan, anything's possible, but I would not expect them to be on the same level as the Padres or the Dodgers. But they're still, I would say, if you were to give them list them in a tier, you would probably list them in C tier, where the S tier, the very top, are like the Yankees, Dodgers, Braves, Padres, and then and B tier you have got teams like the Twins, White Sox, Indians, like the Nationals, Phillies, that kind of deal. And then in the C tier you have just they're not bad, they're not necessarily that good, but that's going to be the Giants. The Giants are going to win some games that you're not going to expect them to win, and they should win the games that are, and they should be winning the games that they should obviously be winning. But this Giants team seems like a sort of 500 team. But they're in the exact wrong division for that. You might be able to win an NL Central with staying around 500, but the Giants are going to obviously be in one of the toughest divisions in baseball with the Padres and the Dodgers. I don't think it's necessarily the toughest by any stretch of the imagination, but it is enough for them to have some worry about where they are going and who they are in the future. And their bullpen isn't very it's not very exciting at all, really. They only have their closer is probably going to be. They have a bunch of guys that could be closers. They have Tyler Rogers, Matt Weisler, Jake McGee, and then Reyes Moranta. And all of those guys are going to be splitting time trying to save games. But their bullpen isn't great. The guys that I listed that are probably going to get some closing time are the guys that are probably going to lead the team in innings pitched this year. It's not going to be a great year for those guys. The starters that the Giants have are definitely going to be inning eaters. And on the bench, they still have Evan Longoria, and they definitely have Joey Bart, who's going to get some innings, and he might not be on the initial roster, but he's going to be added to the 40-man probably not relatively soon or anything like that, but he's going to be added to the 40-man roster probably around end of July area, and then at the very least, the Giants will see where they're at in the playoff hunt and things like that, and then decide when to call Joey Bart up. But with a guy like Joey Bart, you are definitely wanting him to get to the bigs as fast as possible. That way you can move other guys around. Like I said earlier, and in I believe last episode, guys like maybe Buster Posey or maybe Brandon Belt get traded, maybe even Brandon Crawford. I don't think that this team is not going to do anything very exciting, but it's going to be they're definitely going to be in fun games. So if your team is fighting for that last wild card spot, and you're playing, and your team is facing the Giants, you're definitely going to be more nervous than you would if you were facing the Rockies, for instance, or the Orioles. It's not a team that you can count out by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a team that, while you have to keep your eye out for, they're going to be in the lower end of the pack. They're not going to be a Arizona Diamondback or they're probably going to be about the same as the Arizona Diamondbacks, but they're not going to be a potential wild card team like you see out in the NL East, where any one of those teams could win the division, and then any other two of those teams could end up winning the wild card spot. And then all of a sudden, either the Dodgers or the Padres aren't in the playoffs. So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see what is what and how this team is going to shape out. It's not going to be a World Series year for the Giants, unfortunately, but they are starting to move in the right direction and rebuild what they had just a decade ago. So don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about the Rockies and the Diamondbacks next, and then we're also going to be talking about the Padres to end today's episode. So we'll be right back in just a sec.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to this segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So in this segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about both the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. I know that the Diamondbacks are projected to either beat out the Giants or finish it with like a similar record to them. But I think the Giants have a few more, or I think the Giants are a little bit better than people are expecting. They do have a very good lineup. But anyway, let's just get into it. So with the Rockies, the biggest question is obviously what is going to happen to Trevor Story. Now, Trevor Story is going to be a free agent after this season, and the Rockies did trade Nolan Arenado. So they are saving money by not having Arenado on the contract anymore, but I don't think it's likely that right after the Rockies trade Nolan Arenado that they're going to sign another player that they have. And that's not to say that Trevor Story isn't worth an extension in Colorado. It's just that it's more likely that the Rockies are just going to try and do a full rebuild, it looks like. And because of that, it's going to be... It looks like Trevor Story's probably going to be on the move this year. It's possible that they do work out a deal or an extension to get him to get him a little bit more money and then more security and then potentially move him later. But I don't necessarily see that as a real possibility. Their lineup is okay. It's not great. One person that kind of needs to step up this year is Ryan McCann. Ryan McCann is a sort of an infield utility guy. He can play second, third, or first. The only reason he probably hasn't played shortstop yet is because Trevor Story is there. But their lineup is pretty good. It's definitely not one that you want to count out, especially in Colorado where the ball just flies because of how thin the air is up there. So they have Raimel Tapia in the outfield. He's projected to get about 506 at-bats, hit about 8 to 10 home runs, get about 53 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, hit about 280 with an on-base percentage about 230. Then you have Ryan McCann, who is projected to hit 244, have an on-base percentage of 318, and hit about 22 home runs or so. And then, of course, Trevor Story, projected to get just under 600 at-bats this year, and then score about 100 runs, hit about 33 home runs, get about 90 RBIs, steal about 26 bases, and hit about 280 with about a 350 on-base percentage. And then you still have guys like Charlie Blackmon, who is projected to hit almost 300, have an on-base percentage near 360, hit over 20 home runs this year. And then at first base, they're projected to get C.J. Cron at first. He's projected to hit about 28 home runs, hit about 270 or so with about a 335 on base percentage. And then you also have guys like Sam Hilliard in the outfield, who's projected to get about 18 home runs, hit about 230, strike out quite a bit, but it's not going to be as much as Ryan McCann or Trevor Story. And then Josh Fuentes is projected to be a third baseman, first baseman type person, corner infielder guy, projected to get about 400 at-bats, hit about 11 home runs, 260 average, and then a 290 on-base percentage. And then behind the plate, they're going to have Elias Diaz, and he's projected to hit about 7 home runs, hit about 270, get on base about a on-base percentage about 315 or so. And they also have their backup catcher Dom Nunez, a Jonathan Daza in the outfield on the bench, Brendan Rodgers, Garrett Hampson, and Chris Owings are also on their bench. And in the minors, they also have Ian Desmond and Greg Bird. So they have some guys that are out there to help for sure in the minor leagues that might make the roster, might not make the roster. But their pitching is something that is definitely in need of a boost for sure. Their projected number 1 is a man named German Marquez, who is projected to get about 182 innings, go 11-11 with a 4.25 ERA, and he's projected to be the best pitcher they have by far. Then they have Kyle Freeman. He's projected to throw about 161 innings with an 8-11 record and a 4.98 average or ERA. Then John Gray, who is a pretty decent pitcher in the bigs, but he's not projected to do that well this season, and he's definitely not an ace of a team. John Gray is projected to get about 150 innings, go about 8-11 with a 4.94 ERA, a 143 whip, and then Austin Gomber is their projected number 4, projected to get about 112 innings, go about 5-8 with an ERA over 5 and a whip over 150. And then their number 5 projected starter is a man named Antonio Senzatella. He's projected to get about 150 innings of work, go about 8-12 with a 5.25 ERA. It's gonna be tough to be a Rockies fan for the next couple years. They're not projected to do much this year. Their bullpen isn't great either, and their bullpen isn't great either. There's no real person on here that's gonna jump out with a huge name or anything like that. And all of their relievers are projected to have an ERA above 4. Their probably best reliever just based on projected ERA this year is Scott Oberg. He's projected to get 52 innings, go about 3-2, maybe get 4 or 5 saves this year with an ERA about 4.15. It's not looking great for the Rockies if you're a Rockies fan. And now we're going to move on to the D-backs. So the first question for the D-backs is, how is Madison Bumgarner going to do? He's been one of the best postseason pitchers in baseball history, definitely of the last 50 years or so. And I mean, he just fell apart last year. He was losing velocity, giving up a bunch of home runs, and had a 6.48 ERA last year. That's not great for somebody who used to be probably the best pitcher in baseball for quite a while. That was definitely his worst year of just being in baseball in general. He's been in the league since 2009 when he was 19, and other than that first year, where in 2009 where he pitched in 4 games and had 10 innings, this was the shortest year of his career. This past year, he only pitched in 9 games, only threw in 41 innings, went 1-4 at a 6.48 ERA. Like I said, his WHIP was 144, and he only struck out 30 batters with a fastball that was his lowest. That was his lowest velocity on a fastball at 88.4 miles an hour, averaging out. And that's definitely not good, especially considering the year before in 2019. And during his age 29 season, his fastball was at 91.4 miles an hour, where he struck out over 200 batters, went 9-9, but had an ERA of 3.90. That is definitely a huge difference. He just kind of fell off last year. So the one thing that you're gonna be, or the biggest thing that you're gonna be looking for if you're a Diamondbacks fan, is how is Bumgarner gonna bounce back this year? And you still have guys like Zach Gallen and Luke Weaver, who are very good pitchers. Zach Gallen is projected to throw about 169 innings this year with a 3.78 ERA, and then a WHIP of about 1.24, strike out about 187 people. Bumgarner is projected to bounce back a little bit, but I think it's probably going to be a little bit more than what RotoChamp and others are projecting him to come back with. He's projected to throw about 166 innings, go about 8-10 with a 4.83 ERA, and strike out about 142 batters. I think he's probably going to throw a little bit more if he's healthy, and then I don't expect his ERA to be that high either. I think it's probably going to be closer to his average for his career, which is around 3 something. I definitely think that his career average is definitely in the low to mid 3s, so I think he'll probably bounce back and get somewhere in there. I don't think his ERA is going to be near 5 this year. Luke Weaver is projected to throw 132 innings. Go about 8-9 with a 4.36 ERA, strike out about 133 batters. That's pretty decent. And in his last outing one of his last outings in the big or in spring training, he struck out 4 batters, but did give up 3 home runs against the Rockies in his short outing just earlier. He did have some home run issues last season, but that's not really encouraging when in his first start he gives up a whole bunch of home runs as well. But Caleb Smith did a very good job in his last outing. He's projected to be the D-backs number 4. He threw 4 1/3 innings against the Brewers, struck out 6 and only walked 1. He gave up 3 hits in the first inning, and also gave up a leadoff home run, but he was able to escape out of some trouble and then pretty much settle down after there. So that is a good bright spot for the Diamondbacks. And then Merrill Kelly is projected to be the 5th starter, go about 8-9, 4.60 ERA, and strike out about 118 batters. Caleb Smith's projections are 7-9 with a 4.73 ERA, 137 innings, and strike out about 150 batters as well. And the next question is who is the real Ketel Marte? Because in 2019 he had a fantastic year, finished 4th in MVP voting, and that probably sold his season a little bit short. But last year, Marte kind of fell off. We're gonna kind of look at those two. We're just gonna look at these two seasons and see and compare them a little bit. So he had 32 home runs in the 144 games that he played in 2019. In 2020, in the 45 games he played, he had 2 home runs. In the 45 games that he played in 2020, he had 17 RBIs. In 2019, in the 144 games that he played, he had 92 stolen bases. In 2020, he had 1. 2019, he had 10. In 2019, he had 329 versus 2018, where he had only 287. He struck out at a higher rate as well. In 2019, he only struck out 86 times. In 2020, he struck out 21 times. And his on-base percentage in 2019 was about 66 points higher. In 2019. In 2019, his on-base percentage was a 389, and in 2020, it was a 323, which is more closer to his career average. So the question for Ketel Marte this year is are you a slap hitting infielder who is just gonna try and get on base, or are you just a full-fledged superstar that nobody can deny? The team itself looks pretty decent, and I can definitely see them doing something, at least staying above 500 and maybe staying in the wild card race for a little bit. They have Josh Rojas at second. He's probably going to split some time at second with some other people. He's only projected to get about he's only projected to get about 218 at bats. Then you have Ketel Marte, who is an outfielder and second baseman. He's probably going to be moved back to the outfield though. This season, he's projected to get almost 584 at bats, hit about 20 home runs, 75 RBIs, and hit just under 290. I think that's a reasonable expectation for him, considering how good he was in 2019, but who he has been as a player so far in his career. Then you have David Peralta. Peralta is projected to hit about 500 or 505 or get about 505 at bats this year. Hit about 17 home runs with about 70 RBIs or so. Hit 277 and an on-base percentage of 335. Christian Walker is projected to hit 254 with an on-base percentage of 330 and hit 23 home runs and about 512 at-bats. He is projected to lead the team in strikeouts with 142, however. So that's not great, but he is also projected to lead the team in walks with 51. And then you have Eduardo Escobar, who is projected to get the second most amount of bats or at plate appearances this season, behind Ketel Marte, and and so he's projected to hit 22 home runs, hit about 253, 310 on base percentage in the 550 at bats that he gets. Then you have Carson Kelly, who's going to be behind the dish. He's projected to hit 14 home runs, 47 RBIs, hit about 243 on base percentage of 323. In the 330 projected at-bats that he has. Then you have Dalton Varsho, who is an outfielder and catcher combo, projected to get about 296 at-bats, 10 home runs, a 247 average, and a 323 on-base percentage, steal about 10 bases as well. And then you have Nick Ahmed, who is the projected shortstop for the D-backs this year. He's projected to hit about 17 home runs, 75 RBIs, hit about 250 with a 306 on base percentage. And then they also have Asdrubal Cabrera and Stephen Volt, who is a backup catcher. they have a little bit of depth, and their bullpen isn't terrible either. So this team is primed for, like, they're pretty much primed for the same thing that the Giants are. They're primed to be about 500 and just kind of stay in the race. They do have Joakim Soria and Tyler Clippard, and Alex Young, Johan Lopez in the bullpen. Those are really good guys that they can definitely eat some innings up for them. It's just going to be interesting to see if they're able to actually be something that is anything other than middle of the road this year. And it's possible stranger things have happened, but it's going to be interesting for sure. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back in just a minute with a Padres overview of their lineup, and then final questions about the NL West.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, and welcome into this last segment, everybody, for the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So we're going to be talking about the San Diego Padres for this one, in this last segment. And, I mean, the Padres are definitely one of the best teams in baseball here, for sure. There's no question about that at all. But there are some questions about this team. And the first question is who's the ace on this team? Because this team is so deep, especially at starting pitching, that they got to figure out a number one kind of guy, like a guy who is going to get that first start in what, if it's, regardless of if it's the first game of the year or if it's the first game of a playoff series. And they have a lot of options here. They have great guys like Blake Snell and Hugh Darvish, but they also have some younger guys like Dimson Lamet and Mackenzie Gore that could be the ace as well. And then next season you also have Mike Clevenger coming back, who could very well be the ace on this team next year. Honestly, I think that it doesn't really matter for the Padres who starts that first game, but I think that I really think what is more important is who is starting that first game, whether it's the wild card game or whether that's the first game in the NLDS. And I think that the Padres could easily be the second best team or the best team in baseball this year. So it might not come down to the wild card game, but the Padres do need to identify an ace, and that could be Hugh Darvish, but that could also be Blake Snell. I think it's probably going to be Blake Snell, but Darvish is definitely a very good pitcher as well. And they also have Chris Paddock on this team. And I mean, like their aces, or they just have so many good pitchers on this team. They also have Joe Musgrove and Adrian Morano, who is absolutely fantastic. And their bullpen isn't half bad either. Like, so they have Dimson Lamet and Mackenzie Gore in the minors right now, but they're definitely talents that could easily be their ace for next year or even this year if they end up making the team. And they also have a really good bullpen. They have Drew Pomerantz, who is going to be one of their closers. It looks like the Padres are going to do a sort of rotation for their relief pitchers, with Emilio Pagan being like one of their closers, as well as Mark Melancon and Drew Pomerantz as well. They're all projected to get about 60 innings, all projected to get more than 10 saves, and there's nobody else on the team that's projected to get that many saves, or even really close to that many saves. Most of the other guys are going to be used as sort of in-betweener type guys. Emilio Pagan, Mark Melancon, and Drew Pomerantz all projected to have an ERA in the mid to high threes, all projected to, or Pomerantz and Pagan are projected to strike out over 70 batters, and Mark Melancon is projected to strike out about 50 batters. And it's like they also have guys like Dan Altalavia and Tim Hill, Pierce Johnson. All of those guys are going to get upwards of 35 or 40 innings, maybe even 50, strike out anywhere from 40 batters to 60 batters. This bullpen could use a little bit of a boost, but at the same time, it's serviceable for them. And as long as these pitchers in the bullpen are at least somewhere near their projections for this year, they'll be fine. And there's really no reason to worry about that. But you could also trade a guy like Dinson Lamet or Mackenzie Gore and just get a couple really good bullpen arms. If that is indeed where the Padres struggle. Another question is Tommy Pham available and productive? And a couple years ago when he was added to the Padres, he was really smart. It was a really good addition, and it was kind of a quiet addition as well because nobody was really that high on Tommy Pham. Everybody understood that he was a really good, and that he was a serviceable player, but he was really pretty good actually. Just a few years ago. Last year he took a step back, but a lot of players took a step back last year. Last year he only had a 624 OPS in the 125 plate appearances that he had. So, and this year he's projected to bounce back a little bit, but last year it just wasn't his year. It looked like, and for some reason that's just the way that it turned out. He only played in 31 games last year, hit 3 home runs with a 2.11 average. He just struggled last year, and the year before he was a very, very exceptional, and the year prior to that he was also very exceptional. He had an average between those two seasons of a 274 on base or batting average, and then a 368 on base percentage between those two years. And his OPS for those 2 years was a combined, or like an average of like 8. I want to say like 8.24.25. I think it was an 8.24 average between those 2 years. And that was his age 30 and 31 season, and last year he just took a step back in his age 32 season. So he's probably going to bounce back, but I don't know if he's going to be what he was in 2018 and 2019 when he first got to the Padres and started balling out. The next question that we have is Tatis going to be able to make a huge leap in this full season? In the first half of the 2020 season, it looked like he was going to be a runaway MVP, but it is worth remembering that before his postseason heroics last season, he struggled down the stretch, and in September only hit 208 with 4 home runs. And if he faded in a 2-month season, how's he going to do in a 6-month season? That's a huge question, and it's a very good question for the Padres, considering that he just signed that 14-year, $340 million extension. I mean, he's definitely one of the most exciting players in baseball to watch, but it does beg the question: is he going to just kind of fall apart, or is he going to be able to just grind through this season and never really get into a big divot? I mean, everybody during a Major League Baseball season, it's 162 games and 6 months of baseball. And that's a lot, especially for a guy who's only 21 years old. And he is definitely the most exciting player in baseball to watch, but he's not the best yet. And that is a very, very important distinction. And I still like that deal. And the more I've thought about it, the more I like that deal more for the Padres than I do for Tatis. I think it's a little early for Tatis to have signed that deal, considering he's so young. I understand him getting his money and things like that, and him securing him securing a bright future for the Padres. But with projected salary cap, or there is no salary cap in baseball, but with new television deals and things like that, I think that the Padres kind of signed a very team-friendly deal with Tatis, and it might not show up just yet, but I think in the next few seasons we're definitely going to see contracts either start to level out or just keep going up. And there is no division really in baseball where the Padres wouldn't be favored to win, and they'd probably win the AL West by 10 games. Unfortunately for them, they're just in a division where they could win 105 games and still end up facing Jacob deGrom in the NL wildcard. This team is primed to win over 100 baseball games this year, and it just looks like they're not going to be able to win this division because the Dodgers are just an absolute juggernaut of a team. But this team is still stacked. I mean, they have Trent Grisham, who's projected to be their leadoff hitter. He's probably going to hit about 544, hit 23 bombs, 74 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, hit about 250 with a 350 on base percentage, and walk about 80 times this year. And then you have Tatis Jr., who's projected to hit over 100 RBIs, hit almost 40 home runs, hit close to 290, on base percentage over 360, a projected slugging percentage in the 540s, which is the highest on the team by far. The next closest is Manny Machado with a projected slugging percentage at 504. And his OPS is projected to be around 900, and he could easily have that above. He could easily get that above 1,000. I think, and I mean he's projected to get about 64 walks, but he's also projected to either lead the team in strikeouts or tie the team lead in strikeouts with Will Myers. But I mean, he's still fantastic defensively, so is Trent Grisham, and I think both of those two guys leading off your team, or with your 1 and 2, being your 1 and 2 hitters, is just absolutely phenomenal, because then you get to go through that heart of the lineup that you have with Manny Machado and Eric Hosmer. The only thing that I really would like to see is them protect Eric Hosmer a little bit by maybe putting Will Myers in that 5 spot instead of maybe Tommy Pham or a Jake Cronenworth. But I mean, Manny Machado is this team is protecting Fernando Tatis Jr. very well, and is also doing and also protecting Manny Machado really well as well. with Manny Machado getting protected by Eric Hosmer and Fernando Tatis getting protected by Manny Machado. And then you definitely don't want Trent Grisham to get on the bases because he's obviously got a little bit of speed on him. And then if you do that, if you were to intentionally walk Trent Grisham to face Tatis, or Trent Grisham draws a walk and then Tatis gets like a bloop single, then you still have to go through Manny Machado and then Eric Hosmer. And that is just a nightmare of a lineup in and of itself. I think that's kind of a like a 1927 Yankees style lineup where you just have so many guys that are just absolute freaks at the plate. And Manny Machado is projected to hit about 275, hit over 30 home runs, get over 100 RBIs, steal about 10 bases this year as well, with an on-base percentage projected around 344 and a slugging percentage around 540. 504, I should say, actually. Tatis Jr. has a 504 slugging projected slugging percentage. And then you have Eric Hosmer, who is still one of the best first basemen in baseball. He's projected to hit about 260 with a 320 on base percentage, drive in about 90 runs, hit over 20 home runs, and have an on base percentage around 321. And then you have Tommy Pham, who's projected to hit about 500. Or not projected to hit 500. That would be crazy, but projected to get about 500 at bats. Hit about 263. I think that might be higher considering if he's able to bounce back. And on base percentage around 360. Projected to get about 70 walks this year. And then you have Will Myers, who's projected to hit about 250, hit about 27 home runs. And RBIs, drive in over 80 runs, and on-base percentage around 323, and OPS about 800, and then also walk about 60 times or so. But he's also projected to tie the team lead in strikeouts, so he's definitely going to have to cut down on those. And then you have Jake Cronenworth, who's probably going to be their second baseman this year. He's projected to hit about 267, have a on-base percentage around 330. He's not going to hit very many home runs or drive in many RBIs, but he's still going to be a decent bat, and he's not going to strike out very much either. Out of everybody who has at least 450 at-bats projected in the starting lineup, he has by far the least amount of projected strikeouts, so he's going to put the ball in play and make stuff happen. It's just going to be interesting to see if he's able to drive in runs or if the runs have already been driven in. And then you have a guy like their catcher Victor Caratini, who's gonna definitely split some time behind the plate, but he's projected to still hit about 250 and about 250 at bats. Still get about 6 home runs out of the ballpark. On base percentage around 330. Walk about 26 times. He's definitely got a really good eye at the plate. And then obviously they still have like Aaron Nola behind the dish who might be the starter. Also, they have guys like Jurickson Profar, who could be a second baseman, also an outfielder. He's gonna be kind of a guy where it's like, where are we best? Where do we need him today? Kind of a deal. He's gonna be about an average hitter, but hit about 250 or so, with 15 home runs, maybe 9 or 10 stolen bases, and an on base percentage around 330. He's not going to strike out very much, and he's going to walk a whole lot as well. This team is very good. It's primed for an absolute push at the playoffs this year. But that doesn't mean that this team is, by any stretch of the imagination, sitting pretty, because there could be two teams in the NL East that are just having fantastic years, but it seemed like the Braves or the Mets are winning over 100 games as well, or close or high 90s in wins, and the Padres aren't in the hundreds yet, and they're in the high 90s in wins as well. And anything can happen. It's just kind of crazy. But this team is very good. It's a fantastic team. They're my pick to win it all this year, except for maybe the Dodgers. But if I were placing a bet on a team to win, like $5 or $10 or something against a family member or friend, I would probably pick the Padres just because I think that they're like maybe one move away at the deadline to push them over the top over the Dodgers. So that's been this episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. My name's Patrick Kenny. Follow me on Twitter at PatrickKenny_. That's KENNEY _. Follow the program on Twitter at GSMC_baseball. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Leave us a review on Apple iTunes. Share it with your friends. Let us know how we can improve and just have the best season where I'm talking to y'all about baseball and the other guys are also talking to y'all about baseball, and we just have a fun time this summer, just enjoying this season. So y'all have a great rest of y'all's day. I hope that y'all are all staying safe and everything. Thank you, and I'll see y'all next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.